So there's like nothing happening in video games right now that I really want to talk about today. So I figured I would give you guys an update on a situation that looked dire at best. This has to do with something we talked about on the second channel. I started a series on there, and then the series kind of disappeared and people were wondering where it went. So I kind of want to clear the air on everything, tell you guys the actual story about what actually happened, and then tell you guys an update to the story, because literally yesterday an update happened with this and I'm just completely shocked by this situation. So if you don't know about me, one of my other hobbies besides video games is cars. I love cars. I've always enjoyed tinkering on cars and stuff like that. Back when I worked at Sonic, when I was like 16, 17 years old, me and my buddy Haggis, we used to install car stereos in the back of Sonic. People would drop off their cars and we would take breaks from our work shift and go out there and work on them and stuff like that. You know, mechanical stuff, engine stuff, I never really got super into, but I knew the basics, and I had a lot of friends around me who either, you know, were like pseudo mechanics or actual mechanics who had shops. And I've always enjoyed cars. I've always enjoyed German cars as well since I was in my early 20s. I used to have a Ford Explorer as my first car. I got over that very quickly when that sumbitch hit 100,000 miles. Everything went wrong on it. So I ended up selling that and getting my first German car. And ever since then, I've been driving Germans. So you might remember about a year and a half ago or so, over on the second channel, I unveiled my new project car. And I didn't think of it as a project car. I really just wanted an old, 1987 Mercedes-Benz Cosworth 190E. I've always enjoyed those cars. I love the stylistic look. The fact that Cosworth worked on a Mercedes, I always thought that was just a really cool car. So I'd been trying to buy one through various places online and stuff like that. And I would always get outbid when it came to like a bidding war. I would always get outbid, and it was kind of, frustrating or whatever. So I ended up finding one about 2 hours away from me at a local car dealership to that area. And all the pictures looked really nice. I started talking with them. If you know anything about these cars, it's an 87, but they're not exactly cheap. You could Google 1987 Mercedes 190E Cosworth, the 2.316 valve, and look at what one of those goes for in a nice condition. And that's kind of like what the price of this was. So I was figuring, it'll be fine. I'm sure it's fine. They sent me a couple very curated videos of the vehicle, and I was like, okay, this seems good enough. And they're like, hey, we could deliver it to you. I'm like, great. I don't feel like, figuring out a ride down there or something like that. Let's do it. I get the car in. They drop it off at my house. The guy takes it off of the car carrier, and it doesn't start at first. And I'm just like, well, maybe it's just a shoddy battery or something like that. That's okay. And then, so I sign for the car. He leaves, and this thing is a piece of shit. It won't go above 25 miles an hour. It smells. There's a Christmas tree lights on the dashboard. Like, everything is on the dashboard. It runs terribly. It doesn't want to shift. And I'm like, what the hell did I just buy? And why did I pay so much money for it? So I call the dealership that I get it from, and I'm yelling and screaming. I'm not going to blow up the dealership because it's like, you got to take some accountability for it. And I feel like I'm going to take accountability for it. It is what it is, a lesson learned, but I am furious. And they're like, so I end up talking to the owner of the place, and the owner's like, look, I stashed this away as a project car that I never got around to. And I'm like, well, why are you selling it then? Like, why are you giving this to me as a project car and charging me a non-project car price? I look under the car. The whole exhaust system is completely rotted out. I can't install a new exhaust or make a custom exhaust for this. I don't have the tools. I don't have the time. I don't have the know-how to do stuff like this. So they're like, well, get the exhaust done and we'll reimburse you and this. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to you people ever again. So I stopped communications with them, and I'm like, what am I going to do here? I have to figure out something. The body imperfections, some of the electronics, I can do that sort of stuff. As far as like real engine stuff is concerned, I don't know how to do that. I don't have the tools. I don't have the know-how. So now I'm just completely frustrated. I'm like, I just lost out my ass on this car. I'm going to lose every dollar that I spent on this car. Well, I have a car detailer who comes and sees me once a month and details my main car. This was just a secondary car that I was buying. And he's like, you know, I have a family friend that I've known forever who's a really good mechanic. You know, he could probably take a look at it and figure it out. And I'm like, well, I don't think it'll drive down. Like, it was only like a couple miles away, but I'm like, I don't think it'll drive there, dude. And he was like, well, you know, just get it towed there and I'll tell him that you're coming and then he can work on it. I'm like, okay, cool. So I end up doing that. I called AAA. Here's a great thing. I called AAA because I have AAA. I'm like, great, I can get the tow for free. They're like, no. Where's the car registered? I had the car registered in a different state. I registered it in Montana because Montana, you don't have to do like emissions or anything like that. And I was like, this car isn't gonna, it's not gonna pass anything. Like, I can't even drive it to get it inspected here in the state that I live in. So I did that with Montana, and they're like, well, no, because it's an out-of-state plate. We can't tow it. And I'm like, I own the car. And they're like, do you have insurance on it? I was like, no, because it doesn't drive. And they're like, well, we can't do it. And I'm like, oh my God. So I call up a couple tow places. I find this one place. The dude's like $100, no paperwork, cash only. I'm like, great. You might take this car to be junked, but awesome. Whatever. At least it'll be away from me. So I end up having the car sent there. They came and picked it up. And then a couple weeks later, he ends up calling me and he drove it to my car detailer's house. And then I went to my car detailer's house and picked it up. And it was running better. I would say on like 100% thing, it was running at like 80%. Like, it still had problems that still needed to be addressed. Some of the things he couldn't really figure out and stuff like that. But like, I had him check the fuel injectors, new spark plugs, this, that, and the other. You know, he made a custom exhaust for the car and it was very reasonably priced. So shout outs to, his name was some, it was a very long Middle Eastern name, but he just told me to call him Mark. So shout outs to Mark for that. But now I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm like, okay, you know what? I have a good baseline. The car does run. It does drive. If I need to take it somewhere else, like a dedicated Euro place to have them look at something, like, that's okay. I can do this. And then I ended up in the hospital. And for like a month or two after I was out of the hospital, I didn't want to like do anything. And that car was just kind of like a semblance of, like, for some reason, I just tied that car into a semblance of bad luck. And it was like, you know, ever since I got you, things haven't been great. You didn't run well at all. I had to spend money to get you running well. And then I ended up in a hospital a couple weeks later. You have some bad juju here. So my passion and my desire completely changed from, you know, working on the car to working on myself. So I lost interest in it, and I was like, I feel like this is too much for me. I feel like I bit off a little bit more than I can chew, and I don't know exactly what to do. So the homeowners association that I live in, the car was parked out on the street in front of my house, and they were like, hey, we're bringing in to the end of the street, we're bringing in a big dumpster so that people in the community can like throw out TVs or whatever electronics they have. Can you move that car because it's a little too wide? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I go out there to start the car and it's completely dead. Completely dead, not turning over. So the homeowners association guy happened to be walking around the neighborhood because he was asking people if they could move their stuff. And he's like, what's up? I was like, dude, it's not starting like at all. He's like, oh, I'll jump you. He lived like 2 blocks over. So he gets in his truck. He brings it over. He tries to jump me for 20 minutes. Fried. Absolutely fried. Nothing happens. And they're like, well, you know what? We'll figure something out. Don't worry about it. And at this point, I am beside myself because now that the realization is setting in, I lost a lot of money on this car. Not something that's gonna, you know, bankrupt me or anything like that. Like when I bought the car, I wasn't worried about stuff like that, but I assumed I would be able to enjoy the car, at least somewhat. And I never got really the chance to do that. So I was just over it. I didn't want to get, it wasn't the battery. I'm pretty sure it was a starter or something like that. I'm like, I'm not putting any more money into this thing. I'm over it. And I'm like, well, I could junk it, get a couple $100s for it probably. I could try to sell it, but it's a very niche car, and I feel like nobody's going to want this. And I'm going to get nowhere near what I spent on it, what I also put into it. And plus, I would have to figure out all that stuff and spend time trying to sell it and convincing me, and I didn't want to do that. And maybe that's just me being lazy or whatever, but I didn't want to do that. So 1877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today. That commercial popped on, and I was like, you know what? That's where it's going. If they could junk it and get a couple parts off of it and, you know, give some money to the kids, awesome. Maybe I'll get a little tax write-off for them, because if you're someone who works for yourself, you want tax write-offs. They are essential to your life. So if I could get, you know, a couple hundred, maybe $1,000 written off my taxes, hey, you know what? That's better than me trying to sell this son of a bitch. So I called up Cars for Kids. They came, they picked it up 2 days later. Everything was good. And I was just like, you know what? I'm at peace with this now. I lost out my ass, but I'm at peace with this. A lesson learned, a very expensive lesson, but a lesson learned nonetheless. And then we get to yesterday. So I had a letter from Cars for Kids that came in like a couple weeks ago that I never opened up. I figured it was just like a thank you for your donation letter, you know, this, that, or the other. I never opened it up. And last night I was like, you know what, let me open up my mail that I've just kind of been ignoring. I started going through it, and I opened up that letter, and they were like, thank you for your donation. We sold the car at auction, and we have a tax voucher for you so that you can claim this on your taxes as a write-off. And I'm like, okay, you know, maybe they got a couple $100, you know, $1,000. That'd be a nice little write-off on the taxes. I looked at what they sold it for at auction. They sold it for nearly 65% of what I bought the car for. Nearly 65% of what I bought. I thought they added an extra zero by accident. And I was like, wait, what? And so I'm looking at it, and I'm like, there's no way. I go online and look at it too. I ask them, I'm like, hey, is this right? And they're like, yeah, we sold it at an auction. If I sold that car myself, I wouldn't have the balls. I wouldn't have the balls to ask what they got for the price of that car. And now that's a tax write-off. Bro, I am so freaking happy. This is mind-blowing. This is mind-blowing how much they got for that car that I get to write off on my taxes. Because if you work for yourself, you know how annoying taxes are and stuff like that. So you're looking for write-offs. And this is a huge, huge write-off. So that's what ended up happening with this. I thought I lost completely out my ass. I wouldn't have had the balls to ask what they got at auction for the car. And now, you know, they have money for kids, for underprivileged kids. I have a very healthy, nice, sexy tax write-off that makes tax season a hell of a lot easier for me. And I don't think I would have ever predicted this ending, but I think this ending worked out perfect for everyone involved, you know? Well, especially the car dealer, because they ripped me off. Enjoy my money. But like, at least instead of just selling the car for peanuts and, you know, whatever, like I helped out some kids, and it ended up helping me out too, getting an astonishing amount. So I don't really know the point of this story, but I just wanted to talk about it and kind of clear up like what the hell happened with that other car on the second channel. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this tale. 100% true, as all my stories are, because I just have a very strange life. But yeah, if you ever like thinking about donating a car, like it's not a bad idea, bro. Especially if it's like not running and you get an astonishing amount of money for it through auction that you can write off on your taxes, and you need tax write-offs. Like, bro, it's legit. It's legit.